do the work for us behind the scenes every day. It truly takes a village.
All right, and that one, we'll get started. We'll go to them, Lou.
Amber, with the status of labor talks with so many free agents, with an expansion draft, do you have any idea what this offseason might even look like? And if you don't, how do you kind of...
What if I told you that the Indiana Fever's 2026 roster is completely different from anything the WNBA has ever seen and has already been covertly planned? Whispers have become a deafening roar, all due to a purported leak from within the Fever organization that exposes a super team so stacked that it might completely upend the league. This goes beyond merely erecting structures around Caitlin Clark. It's about putting together a dynasty with bold, nearly unthinkable actions that were intended to stay under the radar. However, we must comprehend the background before delving into the details. This is unlike anything the WNBA has ever seen. Not the Sparks title runs, not the Mercury supremacy in the 2000s, and not even the most recent attempts at dynasties by Seattle or Las Vegas. The reported plans of the Fever go beyond conventional team-building exercises. It's a total rethink of what the league structure can accomplish. An enormous risk that might either permanently solidify their legacy or turn into the most spectacular failure in the history of professional basketball. The Fever faithful longed for a serious competitor for years. Legends like Tama Catchings formerly called the franchise home, but it has fallen on hard times. There was a noticeable hunger in Indianapolis as a result of season after season of poor play, missed playoffs, and seeing other teams enjoy victories. Once one of the league's most ardent fan bases, it had since declined. The number of attendees decreased. The company was at a turning point. Rebuild steadily and slowly, or aim for the fences. Caitlin Clark's entrance generated enormous excitement, packing venues nationwide and garnering media coverage that the Fever hadn't experienced in more than 10 years. Even the most optimistic predictions were surpassed by Clark's debut campaign. In addition to igniting basketball fans in Indianapolis, her logo, three-pointers, no-look passes, and competitive passion inspired basketball fans elsewhere. Sales of merchandise soared. Fever Games television viewership soared. The Clark effect was actual, palpable, and life-changing. However, something much more grandiose was in the works behind the scenes. We are discussing a covert operation, a strategy for supremacy that the front office of the Fever painstakingly developed. A strategy intended to guarantee an era of unchallenged dominance rather than just one title. Supporting Clark wasn't the only objective. The goal was to produce an unstoppable, unguardable force. The initial component of this startling puzzle is a name that will leave many people incredulous. Consider Sophie Cunningham, who is renowned for her unwavering work ethic and clutch shooting, as a fundamental pillar rather than merely a supporting role. According to the leaked documents, Cunningham is being aggressively pursued for 2026 free agency with the goal of directly matching Clark's playmaking with her quick shooting and defensive toughness. This is more than simply a clever sign. It's a calculated move that will give the Fever fresh depth and establish a backcourt combination that has the potential to revolutionize WNBA attacks. Cunningham is the ideal target due of her professional trajectory. She has established herself as one of the league's most dependable three-point shooters while keeping an advantage that scares opponents. She has won games with Phoenix. She would make a strong team with Clark since her expertise and grit would be the ideal balance to his brilliant brilliance. However, this signing is more than just a basketball fit. The records that were published indicate that the Fever have been discreetly developing a connection with Cunningham's attorney for more than 18 months. Strategic social media contacts aimed at sowing seeds, covert meetings in neutral cities, and even casual lunches that seemed coincidental. The wooing was so tactful and expertly handled that it seems Phoenix's front office was unaware that they would lose one of their main contributors. Cunningham apparently received an enticing financial deal, a maximum contract extension that would place her among the league's highest-paid guards. However, the Fever added something even more worthwhile to the bargain: a legacy pledge. They persuaded her to play the roles of Klay Thompson for her Stephen Curry, the Pippen for her Jordan, and the Robin for Clark's Batman. In addition to promising more championships, they portrayed a dynasty in which her contribution would live on in WNBA history. Additionally, The signing would upset the competitive balance of the league. Clark would have previously unheard of space to work thanks to Cunningham's ability to space the floor. Defenses would have to make a difficult decision. Either respect Cunningham's shooting and watch Clark analyze it with her passing and scoring, or give in to Clark and let Cunningham open for lethal three-pointers. Coaches would have nightmares about this pick-your-pill situation. However, that wasn't the complete tale. The purported roster extends beyond Cunningham. According to rumors, the Fever surreptitiously sought out a different, outstanding talent, a powerful internal force that would provide them with an unmatched presence in the suffering. It appears that this athlete, who is a 2026 MVP candidate, was courted through back channels. This approach was so subtle that it went unnoticed by any other WNBA organization. League insiders have been frantically speculating even though the leaked documents don't specifically name this player, possibly because they were purposefully deleted or preserved under code names. Is it a flexible forward with the ability to shield the rim and stretch the floor? A conventional post player who commands a glass and gives the Fever a physical presence they haven't had? Or maybe a two-way star who can lead the defense and score at all three levels? The compensation plan that was negotiated is what we do know from the leak. We're discussing a supermax contract, the type that necessitates ingenious wage cap strategies and possibly foregoing depth in favor of star power. In order to make the numbers work, the Fever's financial team reportedly evaluated hundreds of scenarios, looking at every option available under the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement. The team was constructed for an almost unfair advantage, as evidenced by the sheer boldness of pairing Clark and Cunningham with such a top-tier athlete. There would be more than simply the main three. It would cover every facet of the game in a perfectly balanced triumvirate. Cunningham's perimeter shooting and defensive vigor, Clark's outstanding playmaking and shooting, and this unidentified superstar's commanding interior presence. According to sources, the Fever may have provided further incentives in addition to pay, such as stock shares and club projects, assured post-career roles inside the company, and even a say in roster and coaching selections. These pledges raise concerns about league oversight and competitive fairness in professional sports by obfuscating established boundaries. This brings us to the GM of the Fever, the genius behind it all. A general manager who is willing to play high-stakes chess and make excellent moves that some could claim are startlingly early to be revealed is depicted in the supposed disclosure. In order to secure these stars well in advance, the strategy entailed aggressive cap management and possibly even contentious pledges, betting on a future that is now publicly visible due to this leak. This general manager, who took over the Fever's basketball operations only 3 years ago, was known for being a creative thinker. A former player who is now an executive had a variety of opinions on the game, but more significantly, they understood contemporary sports business, the necessity of market timing, the worth of star power, and the courage to take calculated risks that others would not dare try. A leader who meticulously researched NBA super team formations is exposed by the leaked internal memos. Every case study was examined for lessons, including the Heat's Big Three, the Warriors' dynasty, and the Nets' attempted super team. What was successful? What didn't work? How may the salary cap and distinct structure of the WNBA be used differently? The research was so extensive that it seemed almost scholarly. There is a darker aspect to take into account, though. According to some of the messages that were made public, the general manager might have been interfering with players who were still bound by contracts with other teams. A major infraction of league regulations that may lead to hefty fines, forfeiture of draft selections, or even forced resignation. If confirmed to be true, the timing of such communications would constitute incriminating proof of bargaining with players prior to the allowed free agency dates. This move demonstrates an executive that is desperate for a championship and is prepared to go to any lengths to achieve it. The next question is whether this is bold leadership or careless risk-taking with the franchise's future. The response might change not only the outcome of the Fever, but also how aggressively front offices can function across the league. The general managers. It now appears that earlier moves were chess pieces being set up for this last gambit, making seemingly incomprehensible roster selections, refusing to match certain offer sheets, and trading away future assets. In the perspective of freeing up capital and preserving flexibility for this significant 2026 push, everything suddenly makes sense. There would be instantaneous and profound repercussions throughout the WNBA. It is said that rival general managers are frantically preparing for the terrible possibility of this super team becoming a reality. There have been calls for emergency gatherings. Front offices suddenly find themselves doubting everything after believing they were in a strong position for 2026 and beyond. The fans are yelling. While some are thrilled about the possibility of an unstoppable fever, others are angry about the creation of a super squad that would upset the league's competitive equilibrium for years. Debates concerning competitive parity, the balance between entertainment value and competitiveness spirit, and whether the WNBA should impose more stringent regulations to stop such talent concentrations have erupted on social media. Now that they realize they could be up against a genuinely unheard-of powerhouse in a matter of seasons, every other club needs to rethink their entire approach. Teams that had only planned minor upgrades are now thinking about taking more drastic measures of their own. Agents are using this information to raise their customers' values, throwing the free agency market for 2025 and 2026 into total pandemonium. According to reports, the New York Liberty is considering its own countermoves after seeing recent success. Would they be able to put together a rival super team to compete? According to reports, Las Vegas is speeding up its own hiring processes with its championship pedigree. Every competitor, even those in Connecticut, Seattle, and Phoenix, is currently in a panic, attempting to determine how to stop the fever from giving them an unbeatable edge. Officials in league offices are in a challenging situation.
Can they step in? Must they?
Competitive balance has long been a point of pride for the WNBA. However, what justifications do they have to stop this super squad formation if all moves are perfectly legal? According to Commissioner's Office insiders, there would be contentious discussions over possible rule changes. Nevertheless, club owners and the players' union, two parties with conflicting interests, would need to approve any changes. According to reports, television networks are ecstatic. For storylines and viewership, the possibility of a dynasty, villain stories, and David versus Goliath plots is pure gold.